So I moved to the United States December 28th, 2011, and I lived in Syria my whole life back then. So I was 29 when I moved to the States, and mainly in 2004, me and my two brothers, we established our own business, which we did 3D animation, TV shows for kids. And it was a struggle to do that in Syria. Syria is not a country like the United States where you can have many entities that are willing to support startups and youth to do their own businesses. And also the academic part or the learning part of how to make animation did not exist in Syria. So we kind of taught ourselves through the internet resources, tutorials, and we started from there. And by 2010, the company that started, where we had to borrow $2,000, it was valued at $4.8 million in 2010. And in 2011, March 2011, the conflict started in Syria. It's just quickly, we had to leave by September or October. By October, I had to leave Syria with my two brothers because of our involvement in the peaceful demonstrations there, and because our company also, this is one big part, since we did animation and we wanted to participate in the people's movement against dictatorship and the call for freedom. So we created a game, a Facebook game, against the president of Syria. So we had, somehow it went through the Syrian intelligence that this company are doing suspicious activities against the government. So they broke into our offices and they arrested one of our employees, although they couldn't find anything related to that game or related to any activities against the government on our computers. And because of that, we knew that it's just a matter of time, we're gonna be in prison, tortured, maybe killed sooner or later. So we decided to shut down our business in Syria. So we kind of lost everything. We moved to Dubai, United Arab Emirates. I stayed there for a month or two. And then I came here to the United States. And just few days, I think 3 days before my flight back to Dubai, Dubai just stopped giving visas to Syrians and just said, okay, no more Syrians in our country. And I did not have a visa, so I had to stay in the States. Luckily, my visitor visa to the States was for 6 months, so I could stay. I was hoping that, because I did not want to leave my two brothers and in that struggle alone, so my hope was in few months this ban, the government will, the Emirati government will lift this ban, but they didn't. And I kind of got stuck in the United States, and I applied for asylum, and I was granted asylum. And I'm very thankful that the Dubai banned Syrians at that time, because although it's better than Syria, but it's still not a very safe place for active Syrians, active political people there. Mainly, most of my friends died in Syria. I still have 3 or 4 friends who left Syria, and the rest died, unfortunately. My parents are still there. My father doesn't want to leave. He said, well, I grew up here, I'm gonna die here, I'm not gonna die anywhere else. Some of my family members, cousins, also died. Some of them are in detention now. We don't know anything about them. We don't know if they are alive or dead. One of my uncles disappeared, just disappeared. That means he was arrested, but sometimes the government do not. There are thousands of people who disappeared in Syria, and this is kind of, they call it forced disappearance. And this is usually the government arrests people and they don't admit that they arrested people. So we think that, we hope actually that he's alive and he's in detention. But one other uncle from my mother's side is in the besieged city of Madaya. It became pretty famous last year, Madaya, so because of what happened there, the siege that was imposed by the Syrian government, and the people who died starved to death there. 78 people starved to death, children and old people and even men. So they are there. They are not doing okay, but they are alive. And unfortunately, we cannot do anything to help them. So yeah, that's everyone who's left. We need to understand what happened. We need to understand actually the mindset of the Syrian people to understand why they went in demonstrations and the current situation then around the area, the Middle East, in Egypt, in Tunisia, and in Yemen, and in Libya, and how in Egypt and Tunisia they succeeded to throw the dictatorship regimes there. In Syria, it wasn't like that. People did not, actually people had hope that Bashar al-Assad, the current president, who was the son of the former president, they had hope that he would change things in Syria to the better. But the whole thing in Syria did not start as demonstrations against the Syrian regime. It only started because few children in the southern city of Daraa, they wrote slogans on the walls, like kind of graffiti on the walls, just praising the Egyptian revolution. And just because they are kids, they wrote things on the walls mentioning that it's your turn now, doctor. The Syrian president is an eye doctor. And the stupid thing that was done by the Syrian government back then was to arrest these children who are from 9 to 15 years old and torture them, just to set an example of, look what will happen to people who would even joke about such a thing. And that was the stupid move. And the more stupid move, actually, the thing that set the whole Syrian people on fire, was the president. He went in a speech in the Syrian parliament, addressed the Syrian parliament, and he didn't mention anything about these children. He didn't mention anything about people who tortured these children, that they will be prosecuted or held accountable. And he just said everyone who goes in demonstrations to demand the release for these children is a traitor to the country. And that's what set the Syrian people on fire. And for the first 3 months during the demonstrations, no one asked, not a single slogan was demanding to topple the regime. Nobody cared actually to change the president, because the problem in Syria was not the president, it was the regime itself, the police state that we had, where you can't even joke about political things without being afraid that you are gonna be arrested, tortured, not only you, maybe your whole family and close friends. I love history, not because the stories are interesting, but because history tells us, explains the current situations for us. Because there is always some kind of similarity between events happened a few hundred years ago, a few thousand years ago, with events that are happening now anywhere. And I think the story of Syria is, I don't know much about the American Revolution, but I think it's kind of similar. People just wanted to live in dignity and freedom, and they just wanted their humanity to be recognized. They wanted to be recognized as human beings, not as some kind of property to some power that is controlling everything. And the story that I would like to tell to people who would ask me about Syria, I just tell them that it's human beings who are fighting for their rights, and first of all, to live and to have a future for their children where they can also live, and second of all, their freedom and dignity, most of all dignity. We had no dignity in Syria. And this is the story of Syria. It's just human beings. They are just human beings, like you, like me, like everyone else. But they are struggling. What can I do to help is really a tough question. Sometimes I ask myself, what did I do to help? And what can I still do to help? And oftentimes, I can't really find the answer. The number of people displaced in Syria approaches 13, displaced and had to leave the country, refugees, is approaching 13 million people out of 22 million people. The whole population is 22 million people. And that's unbelievably huge number. Almost 60% of the population is displaced. That means a lot of these people, they don't have jobs, they don't have homes, they don't have shelters, and a lot of these people, they don't have food, even food. And looking at these numbers and understanding the story of Syria is really a tough thing to process. And the question that what can I do to help? I think if everyone who hears the story about Syria and who is willing to help, if everyone does that, if everyone helps, it would help a lot these 13, 14 million people. I think the only thing that we can do now is to pray for these people, to hope that people won't die from cold and starvation. And the most important thing is to contribute to many organizations around the world now, in the United States and around the world, are doing an enormous mission to help these people, to keep the need to the minimum. And they don't have banks, these organizations, that they can get the money from and just go spend it on the Syrian displaced people or refugees. So they really, I think they need our help. They need our contribution to keep doing that, because it's not, as long as this is going on, it's not gonna end. So it is an ongoing process. I'm really thankful that the United States took me and took my brother. And I mean, I can't imagine how my life would have been if it wasn't for the American government and the American people take me in and give me another chance, another opportunity to succeed the way we did in Syria. And that is, to me, is priceless. I'm never gonna forget that. And I really would like to anyone who is watching this is to understand that any people who are coming to your country as refugees, they have been through a lot, and welcoming them as they did with me and my brother is not gonna be unappreciated.